Hello and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. We've switched things up a little bit this week and we're recording this ahead of time with the Thanksgiving holiday coming. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and we will be sending this out via email so you can listen to it at your own convenience. So feel free to listen whenever it works for you. So as you've listened with other Wellness Wednesdays, this is really about creating wellness that lasts a lifetime. I'm Marcia Caton. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. I'm the owner of C Alternatives Pediatrics. I am a provider at James Island Pediatrics. And I really love working with people and families around what they can do for their own wellness so that they can create wellness that lasts a lifetime. So this particular week, we are talking about sleep for wellness. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the important components of sleep and what happens during sleep, and then talk about what happens when we don't sleep well and what we really can be doing to help our kids and our families sleep better. So the first thing I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about is the 5 stages of sleep. So when we're sleeping, our bodies and our brains are going through this repetitive cycle of these 5 stages throughout the night. And different things happen at different times in these 5 stages. So sometimes when the sleep gets interrupted, we're not really doing all that needs to happen for each of those stages. So you'll see here on the screen that stage 1 is a very light sleep, and the muscle activity kind of slows down. And some people actually think that they're still awake, but the brainwave activity has started to change at that time. And then in stage 2 is one of the places where we start to have some decrease in the breathing or change in the breathing pattern and heart rate, where it slows down a little bit. Body temperature starts to go down, and we can start doing some sorting through of the information that has we've received that day and synthesize it a little bit with our existing knowledge. So we're starting to do some memory consolidation in this area. And then 3 is when there's the beginning of deep sleep. And in stage 3 and stage 4 are our deepest sleep, and where the brain waves change again to more of a delta wave, and we get almost a paralyzation where our muscle activity is much reduced. And this is our deepest and most restorative sleep. So this is where our body is starting to heal and repair. For some people, especially kids, this may be when bedwetting is happening. They may talk in their sleep, or they may experience some night terrors. And then the last stage of sleep is REM sleep. And this is where, when you look at someone who's in REM sleep, their eye movements are going back and forth and back and forth. And, this is also a very important sleep for memory and learning. And when this phase is interrupted or shortened, there may be a decline in cognitive function. So interruptions in these cycles can actually lead to symptoms, illness, disease, and over time, if you're not getting enough sleep, it can actually lead to death. That would be a very extreme case. So you may have seen this before if you watched the sleep, how to optimize, the school, how to optimize school performance activity that we did a couple of months ago. But this really goes through the sleep, the recommended amount of sleep through a lifetime. And we all know that newborns sleep a lot. Even though they wake up frequently, they sleep a lot. So they can get upwards of, recommendation is 14 to 17, but some 18 to 19, and some get 11 to 13. And as they go into the infancy phase, the sleep time they're asleep actually shortens and they're able to sleep longer periods of time. And then that gradually increases throughout the lifespan. And one thing I did want to notice note is that teenagers naturally have a tendency to have a little bit later sleep onset. So they're actually, at this time in their lives, they actually are wanting to go to sleep later. But unfortunately, the way our school system is set up, they actually have to get up really early. So really kind of dealing with some sleep hygiene things to help them, which we will talk about more. But, really, if you look at how much sleep is needed, often our kids are not getting that much sleep. So when I'm in the office, people are really proud to tell me that their kids are getting 8 hours of sleep, but sometimes they actually need more than that. So take a minute to kind of look for where your family is and, is that enough? Is what they're getting enough? So melatonin and some other hormones we'll talk about briefly are important for sleep. Melatonin is the one that we hear about quite often, and it is released on what's called a circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is basically your body's own clock, and melatonin is released to go up in the evening, as this diagram shows, and then gradually go back down in the later part of the night until when you wake up you start to have decreased levels around 7 or 8 in the morning. And this is actually stimulated, the increase is actually stimulated by darkness. So if you imagine what your house looks like around 8 or 9 o'clock at night, you may find that this peak is actually not as high as it needs to be because there's a lot of light in the house. So we'll talk about that a little bit. There are some changes in melatonin release based on seasons. So in the summertime, when we have more light and in the evening, the melatonin gets released a little bit later, and then also in the wintertime when it's darker or longer, the melatonin release is brought up a little bit as well. So it may release a little earlier. And having some interruptions in this can lead to not only sleep, but also some mood problems. So I did want to share with you there are some foods that are high in actually tryptophan, which you've heard about probably for turkeys, and it's ironic that it's Thanksgiving time. But tryptophan is actually converted into melatonin. And it's actually not turkeys as much that have it, but cherries, grape seeds, tomatoes, bell peppers, walnuts, and pistachios are high in melatonin. So if you have a child that you're wanting to help support the release of melatonin, or at least the availability of it being made in the body, feel free to consider trying some of those foods in the evening to see. But we're also going to talk a little bit about how you can augment your child's melatonin release in the evenings. And I do want to note that supplementation of melatonin should only be done on an intermittent brief period of time, because there's some speculation that doing it on a regular basis can actually interfere with your body's ability to produce it on its own. So if we're augmenting it separately, then our body doesn't learn how to make it on its own. So really discuss that with one of us before you start that, and really only intend to use it for a short period of time. The other hormone I want to talk about just briefly that can affect sleep is cortisol. So if you see this rise here where it goes up and down, cortisol is actually the opposite. So it's supposed to be high throughout the day and then drop, it's supposed to be high starting around 4 a.m. It peaks up and then is high throughout the day and then drops down. So if you're having an opposite reaction with cortisol, and sometimes that can interfere with your sleep. So if you've got a child who's stressed out or worried about things, that can increase the the cortisol, which then interferes with their ability to go to sleep. So really kind of learning some of the stress management techniques that we've talked about and some of the other exercises can make a difference. The other thing that's really kind of cool that happens at nighttime is that this is when your brain kind of gets its nightly cleaning. So when you're laying down at night and your child is going to sleep, the brain cells actually shrink in size, and fluid gets pumped into the brain area to help filter out extra proteins and debris and dead cells and things like that that have been used throughout the day. And we used to think that system in the brain, but we actually learned recently that there is a lymph system. So if you think about the lymph system, most of you know about it because you have enlarged lymph nodes, but there's also vessels that connect those lymph nodes that help drain tissue and take that fluid that's been drained back to the blood vessels so that they can be, the toxins and such can be taken back to your kidneys and your liver and your skin to be released. So we now know that there is actually a lymph system, which is what the lymph system in the brain is called. And we, the brain cells shrink and they get flooded with this fluid that flushes that out and then gradually gets put back into the circulatory system so that it can be taken out of the body. So if you can imagine that if your child or you or someone in your family is not sleeping well, they may not be releasing some of these toxins, and then they can build up and then affect, brain activity, focus, concentration, and other kinds of things over time. So inadequate sleep affects health in many ways. So I'm just going to go through a brief list of some things, but just know that in the summary page that we'll have on this website, there will be more lists of things that are affected by sleep. But I did want to talk about a few things because this topic is really about sleep for wellness. And if we're not sleeping, we're not well. If we have reduced sleep, or not only just the number of hours of sleep, but the quality of sleep, then we're actually having impaired immune system, impaired immune function. We have increased in inflammation, and we can actually see that on laboratory tests. We have altered hormones that we talked about. So cortisol can be affected with inadequate sleep. Also, the hormones that regulate your appetite and how full or how hungry you feel, the leptin and the ghrelin, can be altered, which may impact your appetite, then making you gain weight. There's also altered neurotransmitter receptors. So those are the chemicals in the brain that are communicating from one cell to the other cell. They may not be as sensitive to that communication. It can, lowered sleep can actually reduce your headache threshold. So it would make you more likely to have headaches. And then it's generally impacts how we are emotionally or cognitively. So it can cause some poor decision making, some memory problems, and then we just don't respond to stressors as well. We don't interact with our family or friends, so it impacts our relationships. And then ultimately, it can cause obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. So again, we're talking about sleep for wellness. So ultimately, when your child is waking up in the morning, we want them to have had enough sleep that they're waking refreshed and able to get through the day, toddlers and under excluded, where they don't necessarily need a nap. They're able to focus and pay attention, and then they're able to go to sleep easily and efficiently. so that they rest well and heal well. So how do we do that? So one of the most important things that I think that we need to do is to make sleep a priority for the family. We are so engaged in so many activities that we actually end up prioritizing other things over sleep. So your child may have homework, your child may have after school activities, you may have things that you want to get done before, you getting in bed. And all this, really impacts our ability to sleep and sleep well. So really making sleep a priority for your family is going to be the first thing that you need to do no matter what. And as part of that, establishing a bedtime routine as early as possible. So even when our babies are born, if we begin to build a routine around sleep that's the same thing every single night, then their bodies know, okay, this is what's happening. It's time to get ready to sleep. So the transition to sleep is so much easier as a family. And one thing that I do want to encourage, especially if there's any parents of infants listening, is that if we can put babies down in their crib, excuse me, or bed, while they're still slightly awake, that will help them to learn how to self-soothe so that they don't have to have a parent or an adult there to help them go to sleep. That will help you when they become toddlers and they become more independent so that they're not getting out of bed and crawling into bed with you or waking you up so much in the middle of the night. So really teaching your infant early how to comfort themselves and how to independently do that, the easier it's going to be as they get older. So about melatonin earlier. So how do we make sure that our body's releasing the melatonin optimally so that we can sleep well? So if you're like most American families, it's really bright in the house. And we have a lot of TVs and devices going that emit blue light. So what we want to do is at least an hour before bedtime, if at all possible, 2 hours before bedtime, turning off all electronic devices, the TV, the cell phones, the tablets. And if for any reason you do have a child who, especially if they're doing academic work on the computer late at night, look at getting the apps or the setting on the phones or such that blocks the blue light. So a lot of cell phones now have blue blockers on them. There is an app that you can load on your computer called f.lux that actually dims the lights according to when it starts to get dark, and it dims the blue light coming out. And the blue light is what has us not release melatonin as well. And I don't ever recommend a TV in the bedroom, not for anyone in the house, and definitely not going to sleep by that because it can interrupt sleep throughout the night. The other things you can do to help with blocking blue lights, they do have blue blocking glasses that you can add in. You can use red bulbs, or if you have the special bulbs that change colors, you can use the redder light in your bulbs to help reduce the blue lights that are emitted. And one thing that you want to consider in relation to light is the night lights in your children's rooms, trying to remove those. If you need to have one, having it out in the hallway if at all possible, or if you can find one, getting a red light for that, so that you're minimizing the amount of light that your child is exposed to at night to help improve that sleep cycle. So what are some other things you can do in general to relax the body for sleep? Doing a bath before bedtime. So one of the things that helps our body be triggered to go to sleep is that our bodies cool down. So if we do a warm bath before bedtime and then we get out, then our bodies will begin to cool down at a rapid rate as we dissipate that heat. And one thing you can add into your child's bath, or your own if you'd like, is Epsom salt. It's high in magnesium, and magnesium is a relaxing mineral. It's needed in all cells of our bodies, and it can be somewhat deficient with our modern lifestyle and eating habits. So an Epsom salt bath can help. Putting some lavender in the bath can be helpful as well. One other thing you can do to help the body kind of relax and the mind to relax is breathing or guided imagery exercises. And on the webpage that you'll be getting the link to, I will put an audio in there that you can try. It's about 8 minutes long. So as you guys are creating your bedtime routine, if you can, I know, use a device for this to learn this activity, but then gradually over time you can walk your child through it without the device. There are also some other great mindfulness activities and here that can help you learn how to do the breathing exercises and the relaxation exercises. But this one kind of walks you and your child through kind of getting present to the breath, and then picturing your favorite place, calming place, something your kid loves. Kids are really good about using their imagination, and it helps them calm down. And then really relaxing all the muscles in the body. So really kind of getting calm and chilled out for bedtime. There is also, if you would like to consider, there's an audio called diurnal beats, where it, if you listen to headphones, it actually plays different beats in the ears, on the right or the left ear. That can actually guide the body or the brain waves into a more relaxed state. I would recommend this one more for a teenager or an adult who is kind of looking for something to help calm them down and even guide themselves into sleep. The other thing that you may want to consider, and this is going back to how to get things dark so that kids can sleep and melatonin can be released, is really having the dark curtains, something that blocks out light, especially if you're in a neighborhood that has street lights or it's kind of bright in the area, if you're living in an apartment or things like that. Avoid eating large or heavy meals within a couple of hours of bedtime, and really also avoiding highly sugary snacks after dinner. And if you're going to do a snack at bedtime, have it be a protein or a complex meal, because if you have a highly sugary meal, your insulin's going to spike up and then it's going to plummet, and the body's going to want to get some other sugar in there. So it may have your child wake up in the middle of the night to try to restore that blood sugar level. And one other thing to consider with your child is, and this is kind of how you're setting up your child's bedroom, is really to use the bed for sleep as much as possible only, that it's not a place for playing and that. So if you can move those activities out of the bedroom and have a playroom or a play area outside of the bedroom, so that when it is time for bed, it really is, that room is about sleep. The room is designed for sleep. It's calming, it's quiet, it's dark, and that may help actually for nap times. If you've got toddlers who are struggling going to sleep, really having have that room be about sleep and only sleep may help to trigger some calming and some better sleep for them. All right, and then kind of on the opposite spectrum, making sure you're getting plenty of physical activity for your child in, letting them run and have free play and get that physical activity, which can help sleep, preferably earlier in the day, but also getting very bright light during the day actually helps regulate that melatonin circadian rhythm. And if you've tried all of those things and your child still needs a little bit of help kind of relaxing at night, and we've already talked about melatonin should only really be used briefly and really at very low doses. The other thing to consider is a supplement. We talked about magnesium in the bath, but a magnesium supplement may just allow a little bit of relaxation. And the good thing with magnesium is you kind of know pretty easily if you've overdosed because you get diarrhea. So all you have to do is reduce the dose a little bit, and you should be good. It's a safe supplement to use with your children. But if you've tried all of those things and you're still having some trouble with sleep, then definitely talk with us. The other thing to kind of keep in mind with sleep is snoring. If your child is snoring, and you're hearing them in the opposite room, or if they're having pauses in their breathing, or they just can't seem to get settled, they're moving constantly, and especially if they're not waking up rested and they're having any daytime symptoms, especially difficulty, focusing, paying attention, then we really do need to consider that they may be having some sleep apnea, and we would need some testing for that. So if you've tried all these things and you still feel concerned, take some time, a couple times a night for a couple of nights, and just watch your child sleep and listen, and just see if they really do appear to be resting well. So this relaxation exercise for sleep will be available on the website. And like I said, it's about a 9-minute audio. So feel free to try that. We will also provide the summary that we usually do. So if you don't enjoy listening to this, you can kind of review that, and you just get kind of the highlights of that. And we will let you know when the next Wellness Wednesday is. Has a fantastic Thanksgiving, and thank you so much for your time.